Production, Exmouth, Devon, UK, boat trip, scenes 1 to close, take 1, on the 26th of November 2011, production company ADR, director ADR, cameraman ADR, sound in stereo, roll 1 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, rolling.
Oh, wait. video and say roads. Roads.
Paul, are we going to sink?
Dad, there you go.
Lovely, cheers.
Right. That was terrible. Welcome aboard. Soup today is broccoli and Stilton. And over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Dave Smallshire. It's my job to advertise the soup to you. Where's this come from? It's my job this afternoon to introduce you to the birds of the estuary and any other wildlife that we might be able to see. Downstairs is John from London Camera Exchange. He has a small display of optical gear and also some free copies of a magazine that will teach you how to watch birds. He also has, and indeed we do also on the upper deck, have some copies of a checklist of birds that you might perhaps be able to see. If you'd like to get those, they're up at the front of the boat. We also have a few pairs of binoculars on both decks. If you haven't got them and would like some, just come up and help yourself, and of course please return them afterwards. Okay, so you will have noticed that we're heading out to sea, not up the estuary. And we're going to have, we're going to go to France today. Hopefully you've all bought your seasickness pills. And we're going to go and have a look at the named... Sorry, I'm trying to avoid getting wind noise on the microphone. It'll be tricky this afternoon. We're going to have a look first at the named bubble sands, which are coming up on your right. To be honest, further out they are sandy, but initially they're very coarse sediments. They are the home for shellfish and crabs, and you'll find a few oyster catchers and curlews feeding out here. The oyster catchers are taking shellfish, the curlews will be probing around looking for crabs, and on the sandy areas they'll also be probing down for worms, lugworms, ragworms. You'll also see lots of herring gulls and a few other species of gulls probably too. Some of these are actively picking up shellfish, flying up into the air and then dropping them down onto this hard substrate. They're trying to break them open. They don't have specialised tool that the oyster catcher has got, a long dagger-shaped orange bill, so they're ill-equipped for opening them up, and they rely on dropping them and basically bashing them all out. And you also see a few carrion crows out here mimicking the gulls, taking up shellfish. You also see both gulls and crows kleptoparasitising at times. That means they'll be stealing food from the oyster catchers, and sometimes they do lose it. Now, when I see something that I'd like you to look at, or you may wish to look at, no obligations, I'll tell you where it is using the clock face. So directly ahead of the boat is 12 o'clock, behind us is 6 o'clock, and so on. So for example, at 4 o'clock now to the boat, on the edge of Pole Sands there's a great black-backed gull standing out like a sore thumb. There's also a small group of shelduck going almost behind the boat now, so 5:30, 4 shelducks. That's a large duck, mainly white with areas of black and dark green, and also russet. We should see more of those feeding on the sands and muds as we go back up the estuary. If anybody should spot anything that I've missed, please do shout, just to be with us. There's a dog there looking interested at the moment, but they're not paying really very much attention. They're not actually very wild geese. We think of geese to be wild and taking off when we approach them, but red geese are probably the least wild, if you like, of all the geese. We're quite happy there feeding along the shoreline alongside lots of people and their dogs. And the brent geese are very small geese, dark with that white back end, and they are, like all geese, vegetarian. But these particular geese prefer to be near the coast and will feed on algae. Always what happens when I announce a diving bird is they do what they're supposed to do and disappear. So there's now one shag left at 2 o'clock, 2:30, in large numbers on the estuary. But when they dive, notice that they leap right out of the water. There we are, the second bird's come up, and there's another one at 3:30. The one at 3:30 is a juvenile bird, or a first winter bird, so it has a pale throat. Some of the adults will be seeing, if we get the sun on them, we'll notice they are lovely bottle green, metallic green, but also they may start to be showing their breeding plumage, believe it or not, which is a wispy crest on top of the head. We've got some brent geese coming up now at 3 o'clock. They're end-ons. Pale-bellied brent, which we have a very small number on the estuary. These have come from Greenland, probably. And indeed, as do many of the birds on the estuary, they've all hailed from pretty inhospitable climate at this time of year, so they've come a long way south in the hope of getting a mild winter, and they're certainly getting a mild autumn. So out on the gravel beds to the right we've got a scattering of herring gulls and carrion crows. Now, it's unusual to see carrion crows. Now, the old saying that if there's more than 2 crows they must be rooks doesn't actually hold, at least on estuaries, these intertidal areas that are really not permanent and therefore can't take territorial birds. They come out here to feed. They're non-territorial birds, so they may be young birds or birds that are inexperienced and haven't yet got a mate and established territory. And they're a fairly recent phenomenon. The, I suppose, excess of crows, in effect, has been quite marked over the last 20, 30, 40 years. Scattered out on Pole Sands or with a rather darker grey back, greenish bills if you're close enough to see them. Now, as you'll notice ahead of us, there are quite a lot of kite surfers. They've effectively cleared the water and some of the sandbanks of birds. A single velvet scoter amongst them. Unfortunately, there's no sign of them at the moment, and I suspect they've made further offshore, out of view in the waves. Just visible is the Geo Needle that marks the start of the Jurassic Coast World Heritage Site. And the mussel maybe, and you'll see them often flying up the estuary on the rising tide. They're called something, they don't you open it up, so they're actually taking a snap back up the estuary with them. Now they don't all take shellfish. Quite a significant proportion of them are quite happy to probe into mud or sand, and they'll go for wormy things, earthworms on grassland surrounding the estuary, but also they'll sometimes take lugworms and ragworms from the estuary, muddies and sands. Now I mentioned use of the grassland outside the estuary. It's not just the estuary itself, the intertidal areas that are important. There's 3 oyster catchers flying up the left-hand side, going up to 10 o'clock now, 11 o'clock. Big white-winged large wader, oyster catcher next down in size for black-white with orange bill and orange legs. So the ex-estuary is internationally important for its birds, and in recognition of the fact that it regularly hosts over 25,000 wintering birds. That's ducks, geese, swans, grebes, divers, cormorants, herons, egrets, waders. It has been recognised as a special protection area. That's the highest accolade that a European site of nature conservation importance can get. In fact, it's the bird sites that are called designated as an SPA. Looking over to our left, towards the sun, we've got beyond Pole Sands the first, beyond the groins of Dawlish Warren, the first the town of Dawlish, and around to the left of Dawlish, the Parson and Clark headland, and then beyond that, getting hazier, the Hope's Nose, which marks the northern edge of Tor Bay. Beyond that, in the very distance, the steep cliff of Berry Head, a very important seabird colony, the largest seabird colony on the south coast of England, and a noted haunt for seabird watchers and rarity seekers too. So lots of interesting birds there, but also very important for its limestone wall. At the cliffs we can see limestone rock, of course, or old red sandstone. Shag again on the left, just beyond this red buoy. That's an immature bird with a pale chin. Right down onto the belly, whereas the shags have dark bellies as a rule in their immature plumage. The adults, of course, like cormorants, are entirely dark. Coming up on our left, again beyond the end of Pole Sands, is the spit of Dawlish Warren. Very dynamic feature. It's been created and moved around by ocean currents, by the sea, over millennia. It's actually technically a double spit. It has been 2 separate spits in the past, with a wet area in between the two. now it's dry in the middle, but it nevertheless continues to be attacked by the sea. What has typically happened is that sediment has been washed across the estuary and blown up on the seafront at Exmouth, where there really ought to be a big sand dune system. But of course we put things like hotels and car parks and beach huts and so on in the way, so that can't happen naturally anymore. The groins also have upset the movement of sediment. To some extent they're there to trap sediment and stop erosion, but the sand dune system on Dawlish Warren is and wants to be dynamic. It needs to be moving, and we've planted marrow grass and stopped it moving, and basically it doesn't like it. And you can see between the first groin and the next one, a cliff, a sand cliff, has developed over the last winter or two. That's become a serious risk of breach, and in fact if that were allowed to continue, we wouldn't be able to sail up and down this channel we are at the moment, because there would be a new mouth of the River Exe there, probably. The currents would have changed significantly, and Exmouth and its docks may cease to be in that respect. At the bottom of the dunes, that little cliff there, in the hopes that it will stabilise and stop further. Have interests in the estuary, including Stuart line crew, and the Stuart lines will be keen for a breach not to happen. It's bad enough with sediments wandering around on the bed of the estuary as it is, and helping us come on the ground occasionally, which of course we're not going to do today, are we? No. Somewhat lower than it should be at the moment. Of course the tide there's jolly well what it's up to. We make our predictions, and the tide tables tell us that it should be much higher than this at the moment. So strength and direction will influence how high the sea is at any particular point. And at the moment we're waiting for a bit more sea coming up the estuary, otherwise we may well have to sit around on the sandbar for a little while. Great blackback gull again on the lake at 9 o'clock. This is from the great blackback with yellow legs rather than pink, and the black on the back is a dark grey rather than solid black. Local nature reserve, operated jointly by the District Council and Devon Wildlife Trust. Part of it is a golf course and is accessible to the public, which is a shame because it's actually a rather nice deep habitat, and the short grass is much beloved of pickets and blacktails and geese and sometimes oyster and very capable and not even dangerous. The other habitats, however, are more accessible. The sand dune systems have a population of sand lizards that were introduced here about 10 years ago now. They seem to be surviving, although some have had to be rescued from that sand cliff we were looking at earlier, and moved out onto the point here that we're travelling past now. Beyond the sand dunes there are some very flower-rich grasslands, huge numbers of side, almost directly ahead of the boat, and I'm sorry, but we'll catch more of those later. So yes, orchid-rich grasslands, lots of southern marsh orchids, for example, marsh helleborines, and also lots of other interesting plants. There's another curlew coming up on the left, low down this time over the water. but brown colour with a white patch up the back. The warren also has freshwater ponds and some scrubby areas which are very interesting for birds and other wildlife. There's visitor centre and the hide. The hide overlooks one of the main high tide roosts for waders on the estuary, so a visit there 2 hours either side of high tide. Red-breasted mergansers. These are fish-eating ducks that spend the winter in good numbers on the estuary, probably in excess of 100 at peak. They're probably still building up in number at the moment. I'm just checking this little beach on the right. Occasionally there'll be a rock pipit or possibly a black redstart even feeding around the boulders and on the beach, taking advantage of the kelp flies that breed there. Coming up on the right is an immature shag sitting out on a buoy, so good view of that. Like 2 shags coming up on buoys, another one coming up at 1 o'clock. And then beyond that second shag, I can see the first of the red geese very close inshore at 1 o'clock. And the shags are really the maritime, the marine version of cormorant. Cormorant basically wants to be a freshwater bird. Over most of the world it is a freshwater bird. We're rather more used to seeing them around the coast in Britain. But around rocky coasts in particular we find shags. So what are they doing in this nice muddy estuary? Well, basically they're looking for fish, of course. They're big fish eaters, and well, actually quite small fish is their preferred diet. Never as big as a fisherman would have you believe. And they're taking advantage of large numbers of fish that come in the estuary to spawn. So things like sea bass and flounder and grey mullet. Now the red-breasted mergansers are diving ducks. They're diving to catch fish, as indeed the shags and cormorants will do, of course. So the moment I spot one, it'll probably dive. I'm just about to say there's one and it dived. So that's actually ahead of the boat almost at midnight, but it's underwater. So not much good to you at all. It's up, I'm told. Can't see it. Oh yes, it's 1 o'clock. That's the one I'm looking at. Oh no, we've got a drake at 2 o'clock beyond the yellow buoy. Swimming right. So it's about 3 o'clock. Swimming right. Group of oyster catchers coming up in the background. Train behind, rather more dowdy grey and rufous version at 3:30. She's gone down, of course. And at 3:30 also, right on the edge of the sand is a heron,
got it.
grey heron, looking rather shoreline, and also a couple of what I think are cormorants. They've got their and going left from them, so towards 2 o'clock, there's a single curlew on the edge of the sandbank, actually walking away from us. several cormorants on the sandbank, in fact, between 3 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Catchers. Don't see a lot of colour against the light, unfortunately. There's an oyster catcher, 2 oyster catchers flying right, 4 o'clock now. They're long curved bills, white patch up the back and behind us.
Delia, I think he's waiting for the tide. I think so.
At 10 o'clock on the sandy beach, a black-headed gull just landed in the shallow water. To the right of it, a pied wagtail, a bird that likes to get along any 30 now to us. Can't tell the time. The black-headed gull is a small gull with a white flash towards the wingtips, dusky under the wingtip. And the shag at 9 o'clock just died, and up again and down again. 8 o'clock. Edge. Quite inconspicuous. And another shag further to the right of it. So the curlew is out. Piece at 10 o'clock. The Sunday bay off to our left at 10 o'clock is almost devoid of birds at the moment, but at certain stages of the tide, when it's receding and coming in, that'll be full of waders and brent geese. We've discovered from counting the birds and their distribution at different stages of the tidal cycle, and even at different times as well, and areas that don't seem to be or seem to be devoid of birds at certain times will have lots of birds at other times. The inlet that's coming up at 10 o'clock has a few oyster catchers and a single curlew around it, and a lesser black-backed gull just beyond the blue buoy. To the left of some mussel cages, dark structures on the sand. A roosting flock of, or resting flock of great blackbacks flying around further up the estuary. I can't see them myself at the moment. But right in the middle of the group of great blackbacks are 1, 2, 3 lesser blackbacks, one at the front, right in the middle of the group, and indeed towards the left-hand end of the group another 2, so that's at least 5 lesser black-backed gulls left of the gull flock. So we come 3 herring gulls to the left. So we look in the middle of the estuary. In the distance there is a wooden hut on a raft, and it's in front of that at present, just appearing to move right. And there's a second bird. Looks as though it might be a young bird. It's a little bit brown, less dark grey and white than the adult. So that's nicely on cue, peregrine falcon. Meanwhile, to get a bit more weight on the left-hand side of the boat, let's see what we can see over here. Into the light at 10 o'clock-ish will be an American widgeon. It's been there for several weeks now with the flock of ready. So that's one bird that we need to be keeping an eye open for somewhere. It's another little diving bird, very black and white in appearance, like a small version of a winter plumaged great-crested grebe, great-crested. Quite a reasonable view of the peregrine now. And a small wader flying around at 3 o'clock, 2 of them, which are dunlins, flying right, 3 of them. Peregrine having a little preen there. Right-hand bird. Now, look to each other, then you'll very certainly know which the female is. More or less together. Beyond this catamaran at 10 o'clock, there's a blue and white boat to the left of the blue and white boat. In fact, beyond the catamaran now, 3 mergansers underneath the railway bridge. There's that blue and white boat, another drake merganser sandwiched between 2 groups of Brent geese. More mergansers to the right of them, 2 pairs. And then more geese, more Brent geese on the shoreline. Oyster catcher flying left carrying a mussel or shellfish of some description. Wandered along from their residence on the cliffs along the coast somewhere, and having a good scattering of red-breasted mergansers off to our left. Still not. I got him. Right, a yacht at 10 o'clock with a blue sail, white yacht. Look beyond the right hand then now. Just come up. Yeah, it's a little green. Right underneath the church tower. It's gone down again. So behind the dark blue boat, roughly.
Oh, is it little toys?
Straight down. Yeah, we're usually just a handful of little grebes, mostly on the fresh sections of the river right at the head of the estuary, but there's sometimes 2 or 3 around. Right, let's see what's on the right-hand side. We've got this concentration of carrion crows here. So you'll gather from. So lots of oyster catchers here, standing around asleep or feeding. Just spotted a little egret at 3 o'clock. It's gone down out of view in one of the depressions. And egrets are not fond of windy days on the estuary. The ripples on the water make it difficult. I think we've got a peregrine here. Here comes a peregrine to our right, above all the crows, coming down, stooping, up again. 3:30 coming down again through the crows. Those crows are a bit big for it, to be honest. It's at the right hand end of the flying crows, coming back left. Got a bit of height. While the female will come in and attack, often from above, though I think we've got the female at the bottom this time. I'm not sure. Hard to say because they're different distances apart. Oh, the one on the right had a go at a crow half-heartedly, scooping me down. That would be a jolly big bird for a peregrine to take. But often the smaller male will play with the prey and distract them while the female comes in for the kill. Actually lost the other bird now. Oh, well, that was good while it lasted. Crows live to talon on the tail. But the panic you saw there is very typical of the presence of a bird of prey. And often birds will bunch together. Waders, for example, will get into tight flocks and wheel around. Group of oyster catchers at 3:30, 4 o'clock, right on the edge of the sand.
There's a lot of lovely and happy clips. Sue walks up the other side of the estuary. Sit up there and watch her.
A rather distant great crested grebe coming up at 2 o'clock, beyond the second of the yellow buoys. Not sure as eggs is eggs, it'll be up. It's all on the estuary yet this winter. There's certainly at least 2 there, maybe below the yellow pole.
All these, I can only see one trying this way.
So there's 3 golden. I'm just not convinced there is a smaller grebe there. 2 great crested grebes, 3 golden eye at least. So we have 2 more great crested grebes at 1:30. Look at 3 o'clock in front of that grey goose group in the shallow water, and there it is, just come up. Not in full winter bloom, it's actually got a little bit of summer. one shallow water. Left-hand wall is a very large great blackback. Then we have a herring gull, and to the right of that, a lesser blackback, looking the same size. The great blackback has just at 10 o'clock, little egret, right on the water's edge, walking in the shallow water.
Miranda's mooring.
And then coming up further to the right of that, groups of widgeon, right against the, right, they seem to be right on the water's edge.
Star-crossed and Powdrum Sailing Club, the second
Common
one,
gull.
not the Brunel one.
Gulls coming up on the left, many which are bathing or preening. This is the freshwater inlet of the River Ken. A few widgeon in the channel and mallard on the. When they're common during the summer, they're vastly outnumbered
Powdrum
by
Castle.
widgeon and teal during the winter. We have perhaps 3,000, like other ducks, they're not upending or diving or anything like that. They're walking around, grazing on algae. And then later in the winter, as with the Brents, when the algae are over the seawall and feed on the grasslands, on the marshes. Muddy waders, these are the birds that like to feed on worms and such like in very organic. That'll be the green shark. Actually, it's a fair way right. There's a
Livingston
white
Commandos.
box to the right of the castle. The white box is on the railway, side of the railway, and we're looking to the right of that still. It's the first bird up at 10 o'clock, free on the wet mud. Gull just landed to the left of them. On the mud, a little egret, that's 1,000 of these. Some red shanks on fluttering to the right of the egret, and a turnstone behind the egret, just running left. 2 turnstones there, 3 turnstones. Twin flash, a couple more turnstones, 3 turnstones running along the shore to the right of the widgeon. And 4. Ducks, large ducks, mainly white, with what appears to be black patterning on them at this range. Across the front of the boat, panicking great crested grebe, across our bows. Oh yeah, it's coming, going to come down the left-hand side of the boat now. 10 o'clock, 2 more great crested grebes ahead of us. I think that's probably the biggest number. And in fact, directly ahead of the boat, you're all going to rush to the front now, but the first sightings of avocets coming up. There's a fairly tight pack of them. To the left of a large yellow ball, tailed in flight, looks like the curlew. Basically brown with In line just with that large yellowish ball very close to it.
So he said we see up here.
Sandstone cliffs. Livingstone used to be a whaling port. Well, they used to tow dead whales in there and render them down, which is perhaps as near as anywhere we'll get in Devon to being a whaling port. Now ahead of us on the right bank is the large buildings of. So we have on occasions had the excitement not only of avocets along the shoreline, but also marines throwing themselves about in the mud and doing very strange things. So the avocets are coming closer, they're now to the right of the yellow buoy, and then we follow East Anglia. It also spread significantly on the continent, and large numbers started to breed also in the Netherlands. Side to side, these wonderful upturned bills are highly specialised,
Limpston,
of course, and in that oozy mud they'll be taking my pocket. And seeing as we haven't got a lot else to look at just at the moment, I'll pass those around the boat. There are probably several thousand hydrobia in this small glass bottle, so they're a very small mollusk. The avocets, as indeed other waders, will eat them, pass them into the gizzard where they'll get ground up. The juicy bits get digested, and then the indigestible bits, the shelly bits, get thrown up as a pellet. So it's not just owls and birds of prey that throw up pellets. A lot of other birds do. Insect-eating birds will throw up chitinous remains, and so hydrobia is an extremely important element of the X's wildlife. They occur in this organic oozy mud at densities up to 3,000 per square metre. They're the main food source of the dunlin as well, and also shelducks. So organic mud is extremely rich in nutrients, and the nutrients are a combination of what is brought in by each tide in the form of very small particles, but also of course what comes down the X-catchment by way of soil and other organic particles, with phosphates and other fertilisers associated with them. So these mud banks in fact are the equivalent of the temperate rainforest in the coral reef. They're incredibly rich in terms of biomass. So it's below the left-hand end of the Limpston. Down at the other end of the estuary from where we've come. I did see 4 at Dawlish Warren last weekend. That's the most I've ever seen there. Needless to say, it was on high tide and they were fast asleep and not feeding. These hydrobius shells. Slight hook tip to the bill. If we were even closer we'd be able to see, but it's a saw bill. It has serrated edges that help it to grasp the slippery fish that it's feeding on. And we have a group of avocets coming up on the left of the flock. left of them. And a black-tailed godwit at 2 o'clock in the shallow water on its own, long straight bill, curlew to the left of it and a further away to the right another curlew. Black-tailed godwit, arguably the most important bird on the excess tree in the winter. We have about 1,000 of them. Great blubbers also, 2 at least. These are quite stocky birds, short-billed dumlins flying with a white wing stripe. And a tree call, if you can hear it, very distinctive. 4:30, I can hear a call from that. Great blubbers, like all blubbers, like to feed alone. They are relying on sight and to some extent hearing, probably, for detecting prey on the surface. What looks like an upturned rowing boat. It isn't an event coming up at 3 o'clock. To the right of that and just beyond it is a grey plumber standing behind the black-headed gull, just running along a little bit. So the plumbers will run, stop, look, listen, grab something, and then run on to the next place and repeat the process. So they spend most of their time sitting, watching and waiting, periodically running. Unlike these little waders feeding on sensitive gill tips, like the godwits, the curlews, the dumlins, these have been working away the whole time, flying and feeling for prey rather than looking for life. Others, including the lapwings, also have quite large eyes which enables them to see in moonlight. To the right, see how brown and streaky it is on the upper parts. Usually a slight up tilt to the bill, so that's almost 3 o'clock to us now. Bar-tail godwit, beyond all the black tails. Along the left. On our left, coming up to the entrance to the Exeter Canal, we have a redshank, followed by a grey heron, and beyond that an avocet. So 3 waders. So there's the redshank to the left of the heron, at 10, rather brown plumage. There's a good chance it will fly and reveal its very large white trailing edge to the wing and white patch that goes in a V up the back. There he goes. Yeah. Past the avocet. That's the redshank, often known as the sentinel of the marsh, because they're always the birds that give your presence away if you're trying to creep around the marsh. If there's a redshank feeding or breeding there, they'll call, they'll see you first, give the warning, and then everything will go. So to the right of the log entrance on the mud. So black-tailed godwit coming up at 1 o'clock. There's lots of little dumlings moving up on the right. Down curved bill, little egret flying over them. Little egrets have a habit of disturbing everything when they fly. Quite large whitish birds. Nice avocet on the right now, you can see its footprints leading away from the water's edge. In fact, if you are very close, you'll be able to see that those are semi-pollinated. They have partially wet feet, which enables them to deal with deep water, and they'll quite happily sometimes swim around. Godwits coming up on the right. There's been a short-eared owl periodically appearing in the afternoons, hunting over the Exmouth Marshes Reserve there. Seal to our right, I gather.
It's there now, the dusky. It's just
Heron also on the left. Grey herons sitting, standing rather. Sets to feed on the falling tide. Black-tailed godwits flying up on our right, joining the X off to our right. RSPB have got a viewing platform there. Good place to be as the tide's coming in or going out. And then on our left, coming up lots of dumplings having a bathe. A few black-tailed godwits. Grey plover right on the water's edge with them. Short-bill plovers, a few grey plovers in with a lot of dunlin. The estuary at the moment, or at least they were last weekend. These are smaller than the grey plovers, some of which are flying left now. Flown. Actually not the best bird to be challenging the waves, that's probably sanderling to be honest, but nevertheless they go on a day where probably about 1 million knot spend the winter, and we see, if we're looking, a couple of hundred on the X. So this is as far as we're going to risk going up the river, not the Cherry. Of course the tide's coming in right in. going to sign off now. You've hopefully had a good flavour of the experts this afternoon. You've left to see them in daylight, so you all know what they look like. You can practice your identification skills on the way back and identify them all as silhouettes. Okay, if anybody's got any questions, I'm going to wander around the boat, so I'm happy to answer. Anything you want to throw at me. If anything else turns up, I'll question you like it though. Otherwise, enjoy the trip back. Thank you.
Again, and coming back in at Exmouth.
You get into this one, you're walking up and seeing people still getting off.
Shelley Road at night.
Oh.